I'm Matt Landau, and this is Unlocked, Season 6, Magic Zones. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a best-in-class property care and automations platform. Today we're talking with Kyle Finley, the founder of Briefhomes and Legalbnb here in Miami. And just a heads up, this is not a normal Unlocked episode. At one point, Kyle represented the absolute worst of vacation rental entrepreneurs, one of those people who threatened to sink our entire industry. But now he's among our very best, stewarding in what it means to be safe, legal, and meaningful in your local community. Today we talk about the profitability of host meetups, the difference between quick cash and real sustainable success. And we talk about oversized pork rinds. Too many people complain, but Kyle creates solutions. He sells them, and he laughs in the face of complainers. Let's get into it. Mr. Kyle Finley, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mr. Matt Landau, thank you so much for having me. I highly appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I feel like it was just yesterday, or maybe it was a couple days ago, that we were sitting enjoying some tacos, and you ordered a pork rind the size of a small child.
Yes, yeah, 8-pound newborn.
It was one of the strangest presentations of food I've ever seen. It was almost like a wooden frame that had these little legs standing upright, and hanging from the top was a little clothesline, and was clipping this massive pork rind. And we just kind of stared at it for a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Then Matt put it on the table. Then I was like, dude, what are you doing? We gotta eat that.
I took a photo of that. I'll share it in the episode notes. Kyle, you and I have known each other for a little while now. Where did we first meet? I was trying to think. Where did we first meet in person?
I think it was Instagram, bro. I think it was Instagram. We chatted for a bit on IG.
Right. And then I was passing through Miami, and I was very impressed because you had this unique technique you were doing on Instagram in which you were taking selfies with all of your guests upon arrival. Do you guys still do that?
We do it when we can, if I am at a check-in, but back then everything was still pretty much in one building, like most of the inventory. So I was able to, to meet a lot of the guests, and they liked it, and I liked it also. I think it was really cool. So instead of giving them that nice warm greeting, I was like, let me start capturing this on camera.
Yeah, and they loved it, and I loved that. And I reached out. I was like, hey, I'm in Miami for a night. We had dinner, and fast forward, we've been a couple different destinations together. I remember doing a little country dancing with you in Memphis. Remember that?
Yeah, that was fun.
And now, of course, we are fellow neighbors here in Miami. You've been an amazing ambassador to this city that you've called home for a long time. It's very cool to be able to call you now somebody who I can count on to literally call you if I need some help. And I'm hoping to kick things off. You can tell our listeners a little bit about Briefhomes, which was originally how I encountered you. What's this business about?
Briefhomes kind of developed and grew from me allowing someone else to rent out properties on my behalf. I was in nightlife since I was a kid, always throwing parties all the way through high school, college. I was the guy that threw parties. So I got into the nightlife, and I got into that just by chance, knocking on the door and kind of closing the club owners into making me a partner. To fast forward the story, I qualified to join their group, just put it that way. And it was a great time. And then we got to a point where we're selling the nightclub, and I was looking for something else to do. But I had this one great client, Farhan Nazir, that was one of my high rollers at the nightclub. And one day I was at home in my condo, which was about a block and a half, 2 blocks from the nightclub. And I get a call from him. And he's like, hey, man, I'm coming over. What are you doing? I'm like, come by. I'm just kind of hanging out. And at that time, I was really, really I don't want to say stressed, but I was thinking a lot of what's my next move. I had no idea what that move was because all I knew was nightlife. When he's coming over and he gets there and he goes, hey, I need your place for the weekend. And he's like, I'll give you $1,800. No, $2,000. Yeah, he said, I'll give you $2,000. And at that time, my monthly cost for the condo was $1,800.
You were renting it.
Yeah, I was renting it. he went ahead and gave me two grand.
Did you not ask what he was going to do?
Well, no, the reason I didn't ask is I wanted to get the money first. Part of my philosophy was like to take the money first, right? So I took the money. It's like, just I'll put a lock in your closet, close. I'm just gonna have some people stay here, or no problem. Again, this is a guy that spent 10, 20 grand a night sometimes at our place, at our club. So I never knew what he did for a living. Never really asked. Also, just because it's kind of a thing on that scene where don't really ask people how to make their money. Once they're spending it with you, you're kind of cool with it. I left. I came back. Got back. My place was cool. There was just a lot of hair everywhere.
Human hair?
He had a lot of chick hair everywhere. I'm like, what the hell is that? And lollipops and stuff like that. That was weird. Come to find out years later, like not years later, like a year later, Ultra Music Festival was across the street from my condo, which is one of the biggest festivals in the world, like biggest parties in the world. Right, so come to find out, that's what he rented it for, was for some guests that was coming to Ultra. And if it was my guess, how much he actually booked it for is probably around 2 G's a night. Because once I did get in the game, that's what we were charging for like a studio, like 2 G's a night. And he gave me 2 G's for the entire weekend. So I'm sure he did like 4 to 6 grand.
So this guy basically introduced you to the idea of short-term subletting.
Yes, it's a master leasing basically. So then I get the money, and then I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life at this point. So then that big light bulb, like in those cartoons, go off above my head. Ding! Like this was too easy. Like this was great. So I was like, hey man, I called him. Can we do this again? He's like, sure, no problem. All right, cool. Like calls me. We did it again and again. And I was like, hey, if I get another place, you think we could do that place too? He's like, yeah, for sure. I got another place. Then now I'm doing 2 places, right? So he's renting them for me. I'm not doing anything really. He's doing them for me, and I'm crashing on my mom's couch.
And how much are you bringing in at that point?
I don't have an exact number when it was just 2 places, but I do have a point in time that stood out to me like big, was that I received to myself around 70 grand in about 3 months. And I remember previously the last year, I think I only made like, 40 G's or something like that.
Wow.
Right. And so when I made like 70 grand in 3 months, and I've already scaled up to 5+ properties at that time. And the cool part, how I jumped from like 2 to 5 really quick. The first unit was just a random person that I got the unit from that I was living in. The second unit was from this guy, Giorgio. And he happened to be a pretty big realtor and also a pretty big owner in that same building. Turns out he had 10 units he owned in the building. So what he started doing was just offloading his units on me. So I jumped really quick from like 2 to 5, right? Boom, boom. And then 5 to 7. And then I was making insane amount of cash without doing anything. Because remember, he was doing all the work, the booking, the cleaning, everything. I was just receiving checks. So then my job was to figure out what I want to do on a day-to-day basis.
And so what were all the neighbors thinking when all these random people were coming in and out?
Oh, well, that's an interesting story too. 0 complaints initially. Everything was cool. But here's where the problem kind of kicked up was when we grew past 10 units or so. It became known in the building that that's what was going on. And the kicker was that now I had all this money. I was tipping everyone a lot, whether it was the assistant building manager, the security, the front desk, the door guy, the valet guys.
You're buying people's loyalty is what you're doing.
Yeah, basically. But I did that because it was like all I have to do is make a phone call and anything will happen, right?
Right.
So it was kind of like that. So I realized that. So I give them big tips. But then, unbeknownst to me, when let's say the building manager gives a command, let's say that, and I call with something conflicting, it became a really, really big problem. Like really, really big problem. More than I could really explain. But to fast forward the story, we got up to 18 properties in that one building, and we're just killing it. And then it kind of became like I was running a hotel inside of a condo building, and there were 2 building managers, the actual property manager and myself. So that wasn't good for them. And then their mission was to get me out of the building after that. when I decided to start actually renting them out for myself, the properties for myself, and managing for myself, the whole thing, neighbors started asking me, hey, well, what do you have going on? That when I had really cool neighbors, like, hey, what are you going on? I see you have different people coming and going. Oh, they're really nice, this and that. I'm leaving for a couple of weeks because Ultra is coming up, and we travel every year for Ultra because the noise is unbearable. I was like, hey, well, I could rent your place out for Ultra, and they're like, yeah, sure. How much could you make for me? And it varies depending on the size of the unit. But let's say for this conversation sake, $1,000 a night, and they're like, oh, great, rent my place for me. And then others would just come to me and say, hey, can you do what you're doing for me also? Oh, I have a friend also that has a unit on the 50th floor. Can you do it for them also? Next thing you know, I'm renting my own places. I'm having meetings for others who want me to do it for them, which were just all neighbors. So there was no marketing involved. There was no searching for this. It kind of just came knocking on my door. Because when they started seeing me consistently at the unit, like, hey, are you the guy that's doing this? And then it became known in the building. And then my phone just started ringing. So people were actually buying units in the building. And before closing, calling me saying, hey, I'm getting this unit and I heard that you could help me. We live in the UK. Can you manage our property and rent it out while we're not here?
Now take a moment to really let settle in what Kyle's saying here. This is a way to find your magic zone. When word of mouth referrals, whether it's for new bookings or for new property owners, are flowing in your direction, even if you don't really know what you're doing, you have found a groove. You've satisfied a market need well enough that customers are ready to put their own reputations on the line. And when you sense these referrals flowing, do not lose sight of that sweet spot.
So then I had to figure out what kind of contract I'm going to put these people under. So I looked it up. I checked out all these other companies, inquired on other management companies on managing my property. So they'll send me contracts, took those contracts, edited them, slapped my logo on it, and boom, started getting contracts. That's how it all started. And then, then we went from, phone management, and we spun it off into, okay, now we'll do just marketing, meaning you clean, you do your maintenance, all that stuff yourself. We'll just send you the bookings. And we started, doing those too.
I love it. So as Briefhomes was growing, as you're becoming the guy that everybody goes to for short-term rentals in the neighborhood, you begin hosting these meetups. And what was the main theme of these meetups? Like, are you just trying to educate people on how it's done properly? What were you doing with these groups?
The meetups, they came not the first, second, or third year. It was like after that. Uh, I needed to open up my network, right? So my goal was to get up to 150 managed contracts, right? So I needed to find people that had properties, and the one by one, call by call, we weren't running ads at the time. It wasn't growing fast enough. But what I would get is a lot of phone calls or just random questions of people, or from people that want to do it themselves, or those that are on the fence. Should I not? That whole thing. And then it's like, how the hell we need to get all these people in one place? And then we did get a marketing team, which is Media Care Marketing, with Angel and Javier. And those guys like, look, we need to do meetups, man. I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. So we started doing them at the Wharf in downtown, and we started packing those things out.
And so these meetings were people who wanted to do it themselves, but you were viewing it as a prospect investment.
Yeah, because also I was dealing with a lot of agreements at that time that the owners turned out to be a freaking headache, right? Mm-hmm. No disrespect to anyone, just it turned out they weren't the right fit for how we run our program, right? So I needed a certain, very specific owner profile, and the only way to get that profile was to get a bunch of them in a room and figure out who that person is.
And how much were you spending on these kinds of events?
About $250, $300 in online marketing, right? Okay. Selling tickets, Eventbrite, things like that. And the food was around 500. But I was able to go over 1,000 per event. Some events I did super cheap, like 400 max. And some of them were like $800. But the biggest we've had is around 250 people at one event. But I didn't, after a couple events, I didn't pay for my events at all. I had sponsors. So then I set up these little stations in each of the meetups. One of them were like a handyman company, another one was a plumbing company, another one was a restoration company, and they all paid me a couple $100 to have a station at their event. And they got deals from those, and so they ended up paying for the event.
What kind of results were you generating from these events? Like, you need to be able to justify them.
Yeah, well, at first it was we were trying to pick them up mentally, meaning like we didn't really have any filters to find out who they were, and then we developed the questionnaires. Like after you get the ticket, you get an email with a questionnaire, and then also one of our receptionists at the events will also have them fill out a questionnaire and ask them personal questions, and they'll say, well, she'll come to me and say, Kyle, this is I think you need to talk to him, him, and him, and him. I've already set up times for you to talk to them throughout the event. And then I'll have a little corner seat, and then she'll just bring them in 15 minutes at a time, and I will just talk to them then and there, the ones that she identified that were the best uh, pre and during the event. And once they show up, I kind of go through them, speak to them myself, and I figure out which ones I want to try to move forward with. And that's how we kind of took some big leaps.
And was there anything else taking place at these events? Was there any kind of like education going on, or was it purely like come and meet other owners and managers?
It was marketed to meet other owners and to learn about the industry. So I will have a time where I speak to all of them for like, let's say 20 minutes on 10 questions or just rapid fire question. 10 minutes of just rapid fire questioning. So people, I'll just stand on stage and just raise your hand if you have any questions, and boom, I'll just answer them on the spot. And that's where I saw the same trend of, oh, I was fined, or how do I register for the property? Exactly, how do I go paying taxes? That was like the most common question, was like legalization questions, and then the others were like operational and marketing, And then my biggest thing I used to push was, if you're gonna do this, do it seriously, and take it seriously, and understand that you're servicing memories. You're not just renting out your house to get a couple of dollars, but you're participating with these travelers to be part of their memory that they're going to share with their group or their family for the rest of their lives. So you have to take it seriously. You can't just do it kind of fly by night kind of thing.
And it's funny hearing that, because you were the guy who was doing it fly by night.
Yeah, I was night and fly guy.
Yeah. What was the turning point? Like, when did you realize that, okay, short-term thinking is not going to work in this niche?
Man, that's like it kind of builds on itself. But one defining moment was when I started getting return customers, right? And when I started getting, because at first I do it all from my personal phone, right? So I started getting text, and I started getting pictures of like their vacation inside of my unit, right? And I realized, holy shit! And then I started getting on Instagram and Facebook, and them inside my unit at my properties. It's them, their family, smiling, food. I was like, holy shit! These are like lifetime memories for these people. It's like an obvious thing, but not until it started coming to your phone, you're like, holy shit. Before you're kind of just looking at the check, and then now you're getting these pictures and these videos. Hey, how are you doing? Merry Christmas. We're gonna come back at this February. Can we get the same unit? Now, most people that did book with us wanted the exact same unit because they had such a great time. And I realized what they were trying to do was relive that moment, right? And I was like, holy shit, I need to start like really working on consistency, making sure that I could regenerate that moment for them.
And is there a kind of messaging or a phrase or a scenario that you like to use for people who are attending these meetups, who, I'm guessing this is kind of in conjunction with the rise of Airbnb? Like, when you first started, it was early days, but more and more people are getting into our industry through Airbnb. It's the easy, low barrier to entry way to get started. Overnight, you can put up your property and boom, you're a vacation rental host. Was there any kind of turning point or psychology that you would share with these folks to help them see that more professional side of the business that leads to real opportunity?
Yeah, well, for me, here's the thing. What you just mentioned was very important. The entry level, low barrier with Airbnb, right? I would say 70% of those that came to the meetups for a very long time had no idea of any other website at all. So when I started telling them, hey, you can also list on booking.com, VRBO, Red Awning, Travel Mob. Like I'll say these sites where like they had no idea what is that Verbo? Before they actually called it Verbo, that's what these Airbnb new noobs used to say. It's like Verbo, those VRBO, And then when they kind of understood there was like an entire ecosystem for it, like this entire thing going on that I had no idea about, that kind of brought into context for them, like, hey, this is a lot larger than we think it is, right? So my big messaging at the meetups was, hey, this is a lot bigger than you think it is. This can change your life. I used to work a job and do nightclubs, and now, I live a completely different life than I could have ever imagined, right? So if you take this seriously, it could change. And most people that are trying or experimenting with Airbnb, it's because they do want change in their lives too. Like let's get that straight. They're not just doing. Most people are doing it for a little extra income, blah 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 blah. Well, what's the reasoning behind trying to gain that extra income? It's to have some kind of change within your life and your lifestyle. So that's why they were taking those steps or taking those chances. And when I also shared, man, I had up to 7 properties and I was still sleeping on my mom's couch in between bookings, like, and then kind of elevated from there. And then they kind of understood, like, if certain sacrifices they make, that they could actually take it to the next level. So that was a big deal, big deal, to kind of open their eyes to the actual industry, because they thought Airbnb was the industry. And when kind of opened that up, it's when uh, I saw that spark.
I think another way to communicate to really resonate with hobbyists or people who are just getting started is to point out the real challenges, the real friction, the threats to their business that if they're not careful about, they will succumb to. And one of those here in Miami has been regulation. And you mentioned that you would address that regulation problem in your meetups. Walk us through how that most popular question of how to register a property with the city led into Legalbnb.
Okay, so we developed the Legalbnb online platform in one day on July 4th. Yeah, it was on July 4th. I know because everyone was partying outside the window. You see everyone barbecuing, girls in bikinis and bottles, and we're in this room for like 10 hours on the pool deck. So we can see everyone having fun. People are knocking on the window. Oh, come outside. And we're like, no, we're working on the store. But the store wasn't legalbnb.org at the time. It was a store for all hosts to service all the attendees from the meetup. So, for example, you could buy on there a consultation package for me, right? A couple of hours. You could also buy our ebook, kind of breaks down the market for you. You can also buy interior design packages. You could buy copyright packages for your listings. You could buy for professional photography to take pictures. You could buy linens. So it was like an all service store to help these hosts amplify what they're actually doing or take it to a professional level.
And were you making money on it in that version 1.0?
Yeah, we're making some money on it. It was pretty decent. Nothing to write home about, but it was generating revenue and it was piquing the interest of all the attendees. But the thing that was purchased the most was the legalization packages, right? So then over time, we're like, you know what? It just needs to be this.
And when you say legalization packages, what does that actually entail?
Well, they'll buy a package for $800. We will register their property from top to bottom. So with the state, the county, and the city, make sure it meets all regulations. And come to find out, a lot of those customers that did purchase those packages, they weren't even in a zone where they could be legalized.
So they were running completely illegal operations.
Yeah, it was impossible to even make it legal. And so we had a lot of returns because we realized a lot of people were getting master leases and even purchasing properties for $600,000, $800,000 to do Airbnb or to do vacation rentals, and it wasn't even in the proper zone. And the realtor wouldn't tell them, or the realtor didn't even know. So imagine making an $800,000 investment with this as the backbone, and then come to find out you can't even do that.
And then, so what's the messaging of these packages? How do you promote those?
Online marketing at the moment, and our email list throughout the years, all the different owners, also through mortgage brokers, and through a network of realtors also.
And it's basically like, pay us. We know the ins and outs of this process. We'll do it all for you and deliver your permit.
Yep, it's a done for you service. And it takes, in the fastest city, it's going to take 2 months to get you legalized. And the fastest, it's not fast at all. So just to give you an idea, like the fastest city will take 4 weeks from start to finish, where you're allowed to operate. And in between that time, let's say you get caught without your papers, let's say papers, for example, without your permits, you could be fined $1,500 a day. Some places $5,000 a day, or even more. And it's very, very, very hard to get those fees waived. I've gotten a bunch of them, and if you don't pay it, they put a lien on the property. So imagine doing this as a property manager for someone. They getting fined, and then that turns into a lien on the house. It turns into like a freaking headache.
So this is the ultimate agitated pain. They know they like the profit of short-term rentals, but all of a sudden it's being threatened to be taken away from them. They've got pending fines. Your service very simply alleviates all of that as a done-for-you service. And does it bring you new properties for within your management fleet?
Yeah, absolutely. And now actually we get to do a deep dive on the owner, right? We really get to know them in this process, right? And we really get to know about the property, because some of these registrations require floor plans, exit signs, smoke detectors, allocated parking, specific signage throughout the property, you name it. So you have to really go pretty deep. And working with the owners to get these things done, you get a pretty good feel for their personality type, and if it's that someone that you would like to have more of a relationship with. You take that, bundle it with how well the property is put together, and if you would like to introduce them to Briefhomes or not.
And now a word from our sponsors. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation. But instead of me telling you how great I think they are or reading off some kind of script, here's Karen and John Bobby of Sunset Properties.
Point
Fabulous.
Central, no other way. We tried other locks, and the Point Central locks blows all
We
the
did
other
a
companies.
test. We did
do.
6 of every one available.
And because we're at the very end of the island, we have limited internet. We have limited, as you know, cell service.
Access to teammates.
Exactly. And so therefore, and then you also have a harsh environment here with the salt water and the wind and, all that other good stuff out there. So we wanted to make sure that our locks stood up to the environment and that they were always pretty much, 90% ready to rock and roll and not losing
And Point
connection.
Central won the competition.
Hands down. No connections lost.
Like we had attrition on the others in 3 months.
Attrition, literally the things were
Literally,
dying.
things did stop working.
I could not have said that any better myself. If you'd like to learn more about Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now accepting property managers with less than 5 properties, which gives everybody the excuse to get a little bit more connected. And Breezeway, a property care and automation platform that solves the challenges of ensuring clean, safe, and high-quality properties in the wake of the pandemic. And instead of hyping Breezeway myself, here's Christina Thorenson of Chattanooga Vacation Rentals when I asked her what's the single technology shift that she considers most important to her business.
I think there are some folks on the property care housekeeping side that are doing some really cool stuff with confirming sanitization and disinfecting of properties. That I think where we're going to see technology with every housekeeper has a cell phone and they're checking into their system and checking out when they're done. They are taking pictures of the chemicals they're using and the spaces they've cleaned. And I think that is a technology shift. That's something that the guest might be able to access directly moving forward.
I like that. Let's give a shout out. Who you talking about right now?
Well, I see Jeremiah Gall in Breezeway does some really cool stuff with that. They're trying to do some things where they're incorporating that tech that's already available in the smartphone to help increase the guest's level of comfort, which I think is good.
I couldn't have said that any better myself. Head over to breezeway.io/VRMB, where you can do a free demo and secure free implementation if you decide to sign on. That's roughly a $1,000 value. That's breezeway.io/VRMB. Now let's get back to the show. So if somebody's listening to this and they have an existing strong property management fleet, but they want to grow more properties, would it be fair to view this system that you've built up from the meetups, perhaps now they're done virtually, educating folks, to the certification service that does it for you, that gets your property registered and gives you, Kyle, the chance to get to know the owner and the property itself? Would it be fair to view this entire thing as almost like a lead generator?
100%. Now it's a big difference. It's a longer process, but at the end of that pipeline, you get the product, the person or the profile you're looking for. Before, you're kind of just pandering for clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you develop a system, this sounds corny because I hear it a lot, but it's so true. When you develop a system to help others, like the meetups are great value to all those hosts, right? And educational. Also, it brings a sense of community, that kind of thing. And then you move from that into helping them legalize their property or different aspects of the property, right? It's a great way to actually give back and help. And through that, you find out who really needs your help in a specific part of the business, whether it's legalization or managing or marketing. So it's a great way. And you get a really good feel for what's going on out there. Like a really, really good feel. It was like legalization and maintenance issues were like the two biggest things.
And my guess is that people begin to view you and your company as the vacation rental leader, and you get travelers booking from it too.
Yeah, we grew exponentially. Like once we started doing this, like we kind of just shot to the top on in every aspect of it. Like we were the guys. We were even doing consultations for others opening a vacation rental company.
So this story starts off completely ridiculous and irresponsible. It becomes very focused and professional and strategic. And then COVID hits, and you start reflecting about what you have built, and you start thinking about things a little bit differently. How did COVID affect you?
It was very eye-opening for me. We also have properties in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, so my sister heads up that department. So I went down there for a 3-day weekend in mid-March 2020, and that 3-day weekend turned into a 6-month hiatus from Miami, basically. But in that time, that big shift that everyone went through in the beginning of COVID, it was like war, man. It was like being at war. Like you couldn't predict anything that was going to happen. You just it was very reactionary. I was not ready. I was even reading your newsletters and all that stuff to kind of get ideas and inspiration of how I should handle it all. And yeah, man, I was just kind of taking hits. But here's I picked up a lot of value from the whole experience, and I'm way better off than I was pre-COVID. It's just the vibe that I'm on now. It's like, I'm thankful for the whole experience. But once we first got down there and everything started going haywire, we had just opened up a new vacation rental hotel in October, right, of 2019, and we just thing was up and going, and then COVID hit. When we're now going into our peak season where we expect to recoup from our investments throughout the summer. And we were forced to close down some buildings, right? We did that. Some buildings, these are multifamily buildings, so to be more specific. So a 10-unit building, which is 10 two-bedroom units. Another building that was 8 units, a mixture of studios, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. That one, we went ahead and made it long-term. So we put people in it for long-term for your yearly agreements. Some were 6 months and some were like 12 months, just to kind of ride the wave because we didn't know how long it was going to last. Other buildings, like I just mentioned, we got rid of. Some properties, the owners were so terrified that they just wanted out. They wanted someone in their long-term immediately. And they're like, this vacation rental stuff is over. So I'm out. I got a lot of those. That was surprising. because with all the profile building and stuff that we did, we thought we were good, but this kind of changed everyone's metrics, right? So you couldn't really tell who was going to stay, who was going to go. So for those, we realized that people did want longer term. So we started putting travelers and those that were stranded in Florida in our units for long term. We still have an entire building fully booked out for long term till this day from last year. So we just had to make things happen. Long term, short term. I even tried to be slick at some buildings and put people in short term regardless of the new rules. Cops were called. They were going to fine us like 15 grand a day. So we emptied out the building.
you were going back to your bad ways.
Survival mode, like it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A monthly basis. So and our our cash flow was completely done. So all that's happening, and at the same time, we're having a record number of chargebacks because no one wanted to stay. No one wanted to abide by the cancellation rules. And again, and then Airbnb had their whole thing with their cancellations, how they were handling it.
Right.
So it was crazy. It was crazy. So once kind of we got through those waves, which all hit at the same time, kind of just rode it out because Florida was shut down until July, and it opened up for 3 days or 4 days, something like that. We booked our properties out for those 4 days, and then boom, they closed it back down again until like October.
So literally, the moment that Florida opened up, you booked every single property. And the moment it closed down, you lost all the bookings.
Yeah. It was like boom, boom. Easy come, easy go. But it was cool because we saw that little, we do over $100,000 in a month in just bookings, right? So, from going from like that to zero, like literally like take a O and write it on a page. From that to like zero, it was like the first time in God knows how long I've seen a zero, right? So it was like, holy shit. So with that little 4 days we got bookings, we're so hyped. It was crazy. We're so hyped. We're like, we still got this, baby. We still got this. Let's go.
And maybe some validation for the product of a short-term rental. Like that was a little indicator that our niche has a future with travel post-COVID.
Yeah, because everything we're reading was vacation rentals is dead, Airbnb is dead, it's over. That's all you're reading, right? And like, shit, travel's never going to be the same. So all these fear-driven headlines are like going across, and you're like, holy shit, So you start questioning everything that you've been building for all this time. But when you got those bookings for those 4 days, and you're like, shit, all right, we're still in the game. Okay, let's go. So and then they shut back down again. So got back to Miami in September. Things opened back up in October. And boom, we're back at it. We're going. We're back at it. We're climbing again. And then ever since then, it's been cool because I had to make some changes as soon as we got back. Like for the cleanings and things like that. Like a lot of no-touch stuff are in the property now, but also now we don't do. Now we take all the linens out of the property the minute someone checks out, and we put new linens in. Before some of the properties, the linens will be serviced on site and things like that. No, nothing is serviced on site. Everything is taken off site just for cleanliness and things like that. Instead of now with the shampoo, conditioner, and hand sanitizers being left in there, that kind of thing.
Your Legalbnb thing, I'm guessing, in this time when there's no travelers, is still going because people are trying to get their ducks in order?
Well, that's how we pretty much survived those big gaps. The only thing that was generating cash was Legalbnb. Surprisingly enough, we're getting calls to set them up because here's the thing is that it wasn't because hosts were being fined, right? And that's like what's happening now is why we're getting a lot of deals. But it really came down to fear, okay? Since it had a lot of new rules with COVID like in place, there was this undertone, like these underthoughts of all the hosts thinking that, you know what, they're going to be tight with restrictions or regulations now because it's COVID. They're going to have a lot of new requirements. Let me get my stuff in order. And then boom, we started getting the calls due to that thought pattern.
So as that business seems to be strengthening and the guests side of management seems to be like a complete variable up and down, where are you at right now? Like what's the plan for Briefhomes as it relates to legalbnb.org?
What I really, really learned from that journey, it's from that whole Trinidad experience and the whole COVID thing was that you have to be flexible. I realized my business was very rigid in a way, like all of our contracts. I mean, all of our income came from these agreements and our personal properties, but it was very one sided. It's only like one specific way to make money, right? And then this thing that I was like kind of playing with at the side, kind of servicing these concerns, turned into where the money was coming from. And I was like, only my biggest regret was not doubling down on that 6 months earlier, because I could have, like, when I had these meetups and all these things going on at the same time, we could have totally doubled down on it. But being spoiled by the current income, we kind of paid no attention to it. Where it's like you have to be flexible and keep your eyes open, because you never know what leg you're going to stand on.
So kind of thinking about diversifying your business beyond just one stream of revenue gives you the ability to sustain completely unforeseeable shocks.
Yeah, for sure, man. And then if and do not, as of speaking to other property managers or vacation rental hosts, you don't have to manage every person's property that's willing to give you the agreement, right? You don't have to, but there's other ways you could actually help them, right? And this is one of those platforms. Okay, so luckily that we're attentive enough to listen to those cries earlier on, that we had the vehicle already set up to make those things happen. But I'm sure a lot of questions and concerns come up a lot that people kind of just look over. One of those things for us was we ran this small thing called a Strot for a little while, which was on that platform also, where people would just pay us about $100 a month, and if anything happened at their properties, like they need a handyman, housekeeper, plumber, they would just literally just text in what they need, and then we'll just automatically dispatch straight to their property, because we had such a nice catalog of service providers from doing it so long. Like, I'm one of the only guys that if an AC breaks, I can have someone there in 20 minutes. Usually it's like an hour, 2 hour wait. And that's just because I have so many of them to call that I know personally. So we started selling that also. So there's different ways you could help, and other than just booking out someone's property.
And let's talk a little bit more specifically about tools that you use to grow this business and to free up your own time to do stuff that you enjoy. First of all, are there any core tools that you think are a complete game changer that allow you to run the business in a new way?
Well, during COVID, I stripped a lot of unnecessary expenses, right? So I used to like use Hootsuite and all these other places, like for online marketing and things like that, for posting. Um, yeah, what do you call it? Active Campaign and all these other platforms. But really, I kind of stripped all the excess subscriptions that I had for specific tools, and really doubled down and focused on my existing property management software, which is LiveRes. So in there it has like Live Trust, where it's like your accounting and your payout platform, and also you have Live Manager, where you schedule the cleanings and the service calls and all that stuff. It's all in one platform, including your online website. Everything's all in one place. So what I did was really optimize and get that thing like 100% going, which then allowed me to drop all additional subscriptions, because I was in a phase a year and a half prior where I did not have a management software. Well, I had one, but it wasn't up to par. I used to use MyVR, but I still had to use like MailChimp and all these other things to get everything done. So the reason I moved to LiveRes was because it was all in one. But it took a while to get everything ready. And then COVID allowed me to really just get everything ready 100%. And I actually started with LiveRes because of you also. That was your recommendation to me.
I remember hanging out with you there in that hotel where all the ducks would go walking past. Remember that? Shout out to LiveRes and shout out to MyVR. Both do great work. A property management software definitely changes the game. And I would add an asterisk to your statement about it being an all-in-one, because oftentimes managers say, what's the property management software that is an all-in-one? And the truth is there's a handful of them that do a lot of the things really well, but not one property management software out there can do every function best in class. And this is where we adopt something of an agile approach to software assembly, to building your tech stack, and taking advantage of all these additional third-party tools that can be plugged in to help you make more money or to help you be more efficient. Are there any of those third-party tools that you're using? And I'm curious how it affects your margins.
Live res is like, let's think of it like an umbrella, right? So that's live res. But then you have the stem of the umbrella, then you have the handle and things like that. Just stick with me here. So live res is like the umbrella, right? But the spokes that hold up that fabric on the umbrella, that's next packs. So live res, you put your bookings and all that stuff, and then it speaks to next packs. And next packs is the actual technology that speaks to the platforms like Booking.com, VRBO, et cetera, et cetera. Live res is not necessarily the one that's pushing it there. So live res sends it to next packs, the next pack sends it to all the channels, right? And each of these positions have a price. So, live res has its price per booking. Nextpacks has its price per booking, and then Booking.com, VRBO, etc. have their price per booking. So that's you pay toll 3 times, and then you find out what you're actually making, and then the owner gets paid. If it's your property, you get paid. But so it's taxed a lot throughout the way before you see anything. So what's kind of crazy about it? Let's say I price something at $100, but it will reflect on Booking.com probably around 130, 128 per night, because everyone has to get their piece.
And so what's the best way to be aware of those margins? Is it just to be super conscious and calculate them out and look at what that final number is?
Yeah, and if you're looking at a software, you have to ask these questions, like different layers of fees, because you don't know until you sign up.
Right.
Because I had no idea about Nextpacks until I already signed a contract. I bought the software. I go in and now you have to link it with Nextpacks. Oh, no problem. Spoke to Nextpacks, and they're like, oh no, we charge 10% per booking. What? Extra 10%, but I'm paying 6 here. Yep, now it's 10. Oh, then it's 15 to Booking.com. So holy shit, bro, I'm up 30% already. So that's $100 a night. But people are booking at 130 plus.
And my guess is that you still think it's worth it because it's accessing so many new channels and so many new potential guests.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it for time convenience, right? Because for a long time I ran mine on Google Calendars, and when we got so much bookings coming in, we're just fucking missing stuff. So to have everything in one interface helps. I would not pay that toll if I didn't think it was worth it. It's definitely worth it, but I think the opportunity in the marketplace for the industry as a whole is that those tolls is find a way to reduce them or streamline it so that you don't the management companies or hosts don't have to pay that much. The 30% in a multi-billion-dollar industry is a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. If you could trim that down a little bit, it'll make a world of a difference for the traveler and the property owners.
Yeah, well put. We've talked about tools and technology. I'm curious if there's any aspects or priorities that you've focused on with regards to your lifestyle and as that relates to your business, because this season of the podcast is themed magic zones. It's about finding sweet spots that have upper boundaries, that have limits to growth in exchange for living a lifestyle that you enjoy, making enough money, not necessarily getting rich, but having something that's sustainable. Do you have any priorities that you put in place that helps keep you focused?
Yeah, definitely. It's a multi-level question, but let's put it like this. Initially, when I got into this business, my lifestyle was impeccable, meaning if I was anyone from the outside looking in, this guy's lifestyle is awesome, right? Making great money. It doesn't look like I work anywhere because I'm always just either on my laptop, by the pool, by the gym, or hanging out in my unit with a bunch of friends while working. It was super laid back and chill. But somewhere along the line, that turned into a full-time thing. But now, where I am currently, I was able. COVID allowed me to reflect and see where that jump went from really cool, vibed out lifestyle, making great income, and stress on the lower end, and how that bridged over to my phone doesn't stop. I'm 12 hours a day, running around, all that kind of stuff.
Is that starting to stress you out?
Well, yeah, my happiness went down. I was making more money than I've ever made in my entire life, but I was also a lot. I was the least happy I ever was in my entire life at the same exact time. And the reason being is because I was working so much on the company and servicing others. I was not working on me at all, like zero. Okay, like going to the gym, cool. Reading a couple books, cool. But working on me, meaning learning who I am as a person, developing as a person, refining my goals, my visions, that inner dialogue with myself, that had like zero growth, right? So having the time to work on me as a person is now priority, right? And also to keep my stress low and not compromise myself just to make more bucks.
Now pay attention to what Kyle's saying here. This is another great way to find your magic zone. Identify the stressors, whether it's complicated properties or complicated investments or just downright toxic people, and eliminate or remove them from the situation. Cut your losses. Eat those costs. Yes, you may lose out on short-term money, but your happiness meter, it'll go way up. The luxury of non-stressful work in our industry is priceless. It is a valuable piece of any vacation rental magic zone.
Right? Finding that, not balance, but finding the right integration of both.
And so what were some changes that you made to this profitable business that sacrifices the bottom line there?
First thing we did when COVID, like I mentioned, was we offload that we did was the stressful properties, right? Anything that it just takes too much thought power and there's just too much going on for what the property is generating, or brand new investments where it's like you have to get your money out. That's like a big stressor by itself. So first thing we did was just get rid of all of that. Get rid of all the stressful accounts, even my own accounts, just get rid of them off the table, which then opens up, your bandwidth for thinking and figuring things out, for being creative, generating new ideas, right? So having time to be creative and actually work out new ideas became priority, right? And having the right properties and reducing my lifestyle down a couple notches, so I'm not trying to keep up with my lifestyle, right? That's like a big thing. That was a huge thing. Not trying to keep up with my lifestyle. More, it's like my lifestyle is within parameters of what we're actually doing now. That brought a sense of peace. Now, also prioritizing how much time I spend on the phone with someone trying to solve a problem of theirs, but it has to be a problem of a certain caliber. So before I'll be a little bit too generous with my time, a little bit too generous with my advice.
And when you say a person, this is another homeowner or manager in town?
Yeah, it could be an owner, another property management company. Like sometimes I'll just get calls for, hey man, I was thinking about this, or we're dealing with this, and I'll be too generous with my time. Way too generous. Where that time, that brain power could be utilized internally. So guarding my time was a big thing, and also putting in place these barriers where you'll have to go through a couple of different checkpoints before I'm even looking at who are you even an option to speak to. Before it's like I'm getting all the calls. Now it's like you have to book a call, go through a little survey, and then if it kicks out back to us, then I'm going to go ahead and reach out to you. Right. So you want to have these things in place because it eats up your time. You think you're being productive, but you're really not. You're really just spinning your wheels.
That's kind of the supply side of the industry. What about with guests? Is there anything that you have changed in order to either enhance the quality of the relationship or the interaction to ensure that you get that repeat booking?
With the guests, we work a lot on automation, a lot. So before, a quick example is before you get like check-in instructions like 3 days prior, and then check out email like the day before you check out, and then a post after, like 2 days after they leave with a questionnaire. Now it's that's like 3 emails, right? Now it's like I believe it's 5 emails with all the information, and one of the emails has a link you could just click and it'll call us automatically if you have any questions. And also there is a questionnaire that they answer before they arrive. Your kids' birthdays, your anniversary, all that stuff. So it gives us a nice chunk of data on the client, right? So now when after they check out, it's not just the post reservation email. Now they're getting emails saying, "Hey, happy anniversary, Janet. Boom, 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 boom. How's your son so and so doing? It's his birthday next week. We just want to say happy birthday to you and your family." So now they're getting a lot more contact.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the reservation, they'll get a personal call either from me or my sister or our reservationist. Just saying, like, for example, like, "Hey man, how are you doing? Just want to see how you like the property. If you have any questions, things like that." And that goes a long way. You wouldn't believe it goes a long, long way.
Yeah, I remember in Panama with my vacation rental business, if you can make a little trusting and respectful relationship between you and your guests, you're able to sustain any problems they may have because they'll actually share them with you. They won't go online and write you a 1-star review because you're a faceless company. They'll actually share it with you, or they won't, but they won't harm you with it. And they also just feel like they kind of root for you. They want you to succeed. They'll send you friends of theirs who are coming to town. If they have the chance to come back, they will support your business. And I think that relationship building really is one of the overlooked hospitality gestures here that vacation rentals can thrive with because of the small scale nature of our businesses. A Hilton or a Marriott could only dream of having a personal conversation from the owner with every one of their guests. And that's something that's not so impossible for us.
Yeah, and what like that, which like that clip that what you just said is like so real and 100%. Is that I had the opposite thinking for a long time, whereas I just wanted more and more and more properties. But more over time, when we got the right properties and we treated the clients the right way, we were making way more bang and way more bucks with the same amount of properties than we were with a large amount of inventory, just because we're handling that inventory right, those customers the right way, and that their referrals were actually filling up those gaps pretty fast. And they kept coming back every year and every year. So then someone will book 3 weeks in December, and on checkout day, they will pay for the following year. Like we started getting a lot of those. Before they check out, they're coughing up another 4 or 5 grand.
And people oftentimes ask what's the best marketing activities to generate direct bookings. That, what you just said, is the best activity. If you have a guest that comes in through Airbnb and you're able to do those things, you've planted the seeds for a direct marketing campaign of the future. That is how we take advantage of all the tech available, I think.
Absolutely. I agree. It goes a long way, like more than I could explain.
Before we go here, what's in the future for the Kyle?
Oh, well, that's the future. The future is the Kyle.
Elaborate for our listeners.
Oh, so our main focus at this time, we're going into acquisition. So we're looking to buy properties, and our biggest thing is to develop our own vacation rental hotel chain, which we're actively working on now. We do believe a big wave of a buyer's market like never seen before is upon us, and it's coming very, very soon.
And what does that mean? Vacation rental hotel.
So think of it as a full-size hotel room. So think of it like an apartment building, but instead of like a luxury apartment building or ultimate luxury apartment building, but instead of it for apartments, it's going to be treated as a vacation rental. So it's full-size units, full kitchen, living room, servicing, also limited room service, but you will still get that aspect of it. Your own washer, dryer, everything in the unit, but you're going to get the service and the dependability and the consistency of a hotel, but in these full size units. And it's going to be the ratio is going to be what can I say? We're going to flip flop it. Meaning, most buildings that you go to, or let's take a hotel for example, they will have a lot of units or way more units compared to the amenities that they provide. Right? At these properties, it's going to be less units, way more amenities.
Like, what are some of the amenities beyond the pool room service?
Well, besides the pool, let's say pool, jacuzzi, let's say steam room, sauna, a lounge, small little bistro for coffee and things like that. But it's not going to be an atmosphere that feels commercial. It's going to be an atmosphere that feels very homely, right? And brings a sense of connection and community among the travelers. So it's going to be it's going to be something new, right? And For example, the entire building could be using the amenities and they'll still feel as if it's just theirs. That's one of the big things. So think of it like the Four Seasons of vacation rentals. That's the goal. And these properties are not going to be large, where it's 100 units, things like that. It's going to be for the 40 unit and below mark. Even more consistency would probably be around the 20 to 30 unit mark, and heavier on the amenities. And we learned this from our building in Wilton Manors, Frank's Key West, um, where our 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 ability to keep rebooking people over and over and over and setting up the calendars a year in advance came from the guests telling us, "I just feel like I'm home when I'm here, and when I'm using the amenities, I never feel like I'm bothered or there's too many people. It's like this pool is way too big for this property, and I love it."
And when people hear the word convergence, you see it in a lot of like travel and tech articles about our industry, for instance. This is basically what you're describing. It's the world of hotel merging with the world of vacation rental, maybe merging with something else kind of similar, but you're kind of putting your finger in the center of that.
Yeah, because we're still pretty new. This market, this industry is still pretty new. It's the hotel industry it goes back to the beginning of the time, right? But I mean, like this vacation rental, this whole thing that we're talking about, it's still pretty new. Airbnb is not that old, for example.
And I think for a lot of our listeners who have been in it for a couple years, 5, 10 years, 20 years even, it feels like it's old now. But actually, we're kind of just at the beginning. It's worth reminding folks that.
There's been a battle between hotels and vacation rentals, and the soldiers of the hotel industry are the lobbyists, right? And and then the vacation rental side, the representatives of these big websites are like their soldiers. But what we haven't seen is the integration of both. Where both of them say, you know what, let's cut the bullshit, let's work together. What is the product that the travelers are actually looking for? They're actually looking for the space, the privacy, the sense of home, like the vacation rental could provide, but they want the consistency of the hotels and the dependability of the hotels, and and the reward programs of the hotels. If you could bring that together as one, and it doesn't have to be grand like 1,000 units, 100 units, but it just has to deliver what the traveler is asking for. And I'm a true believer that this unicorn of a situation eventually is gonna show itself, and it's gonna start popping up everywhere.
I like that, and I agree with you. I think if I was to point at anyone in our industry who embodies this kind of innovative thinking, of going beyond what we have sitting in front of us, what's very visible, and thinking one step further. Legalbnb is a concept that I think maybe 9 out of 10 listeners haven't thought of before, but it's a world of opportunity. And if you can be the first leader in your destination that's being that advocate, you all of a sudden have all this clout in the growing vacation rental market. That's just, for me, a perfect example of thinking differently and hustling a bit. I mean, looking for opportunities, which really runs throughout all of your major leaps in your career. So I'm very excited to see what happens next. And it's literally going to be called the Kyle, right?
Absolutely, the Kyle. It's just the right name. I want to be a place I want to be able to stay and live there too. So yeah, for sure. It's gonna be awesome, man.
My only request there is that you include oversized pork rinds.
Let's do it. Let's do it. No, it's gonna be great, man. And I gotta give you some shine for a second, because before, when I first got into this industry, it's weird how life kind of turns out, right? And I'm a big guy that I go online and I start researching stuff when I want to kind of figure something out. And when I first started in this industry, I was like, dude, who's the best? Who's the Michael Jordan of vacation rentals, man? Who is this guy? Like, I need to find who this guy is so I can figure out what to do. And then I ran across Turnkey and a couple other people, and then boom, you popped up all over my page. And I started watching your videos in front of like this brick wall in Panama, like in your apartment or something.
Yeah.
And I watched a lot of those, like religiously, while I was building, like figuring it out, right? And then there's something weird. I had a thought, like, yo, one day I'm gonna hang with this guy. I'm gonna meet this guy one day. And you're talking like 10 years ago.
That's right. Look at us now.
right? And then, you know, it was super weird. And then fast forward time, and here we are, we hang out and stuff, which is kind of crazy to me because I used to sit there and look at you like, I need to figure out what the hell this guy's doing.
And after hanging out enough, you realize that he really has no idea. The coolest thing about this industry is that we all are evolving in front of one another's eyes. So the feeling is very much mutual. Mr. Kyle Finley, thanks for being on the pod.
Well, absolutely. And thank you for having me. And I want to say a big shout out to the inner circle. All right. I think that's great what you're doing there. And I appreciate your expertise, your point of view in the marketplace and everything, all the value that you're adding, man. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to today's interview. If you'd like to download a full transcript of this conversation, along with links to resources that we mentioned, and perhaps collaborate with our guest, each of whom are members of VRMB communities, head over to community.vrmb.com and click register. Our community is for folks who don't want to do it the hard way or alone. They want to use the path of least resistance. No reinventing the wheel here, just copying the best practices to vacation rental growth that are out there. We like to think that we have the most creative vacation rental professionals in the world, all under one virtual roof. That's community.vrmb.com/register.
To the streets, get into the